Welcome to another week of Barstool Perspective. Brett Coleman Baker is back.
I'm back, baby.
And I get to go back to just being the eye candy.
Mike, you did a great job these last couple weeks. I've really enjoyed tuning into the show. It was nice seeing it from the other side of things for a change.
Yeah, it was very stressful being you, you know. And both Lindsay and Brad did a fantastic job.
They
were great. But it was, I mean, Lindsay was then like an additional amount of stress because I am used to being, you know, the good looking one, obviously. So, yeah, that was uncomfortable. But
it's hard being upstaged. Well, speaking of being upstaged, if you guys have any questions for us, put them in chat. We'll get them as we go. And Dan, producer Dan, he keeps an eye on those things. If he's responding as Bruce guys while you guys are chatting, that's him doing all that work. So thank you, Dan. But if you guys do have questions, we'll hit them on air. Why not?
And that's exactly how he does it, by the way, like a monkey with two fingers.
Yeah, is that why we call him Monkey Dan?
Yeah.
Anyway, after countless...
the banana thing, but sure.
I forgot about the banana thing.
Yeah.
After countless studies, time wasted, money wasted, two Harvard researchers, after spending a lifetime of studying alcohol, have basically said the research around alcohol being bad or good for you when consumed in a moderate amount is basically all bunk.
Finally, we can reach a conclusive conclusion.
Conclusive inconclusiveness?
Look, man, I mean, alcohol isn't good for you, period. Mm-hmm. But happiness is. And anxiety, I think, is absolutely worse for you than moderate alcohol consumption. I don't have data or science behind that, but I think it's common sense. And I think that actually, if you break down these gazillion different studies done on happiness and lifespan and health, that's really what it tells you, is that there is a longevity factor to happiness, mm-hmm. and also some of us are just born with shittier genetics than others.
That's exactly what it is. You can't take all the factors out. You can't apply one size fits all to this. At the end of the day, there isn't necessarily a safe amount, but there's not necessarily an unsafe amount if drank in moderation, assuming genetics, happiness, yada, 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 yada. Speaking of happiness, flying on Ryanair, the famous discount airlines in Europe, might get a little bit shittier. The CEO, Michael O'Leary, has said, quote, "I don't think we should allow people to drink more than 2 alcoholic drinks before getting on a flight any longer."
Is it Leary or O'Leary?
Oh, it's O'Leary, you're right.
O'Leary.
Michael O'Leary.
Mr. O'Leary, you're a dick. Not just because, first of all, I'm not flying the plane, right? Like I had like American Airlines give me some mild level of gruff once, you know, because like, oh, I was visibly moderately intoxicated. I'm like, unless you're letting me fly this bitch, then shut up. My job is to sit down. But beyond that, I love the way that guy just completely deflects how people are angry because you're treating them like shit. Stop treating people like shit and they'll stop being dicks. I mean, those things are related.
I don't understand why people keep getting drunk on my planes. They're only the worst goddamn flying experience in all of the world. Why do people want to get hammered before they get on?
Every single flying experience, unless you're completely rich, has become awful. It's become terrible.
That's true.
I just charged somebody $25 for a flight, and I charged them $800 for a carry-on bag. Oh, it's definitely the alcohol that's making them mad. You're a dick.
I love this quote he has, too, where he says, in the old days, people who drank too much would just fall over or fall asleep. But nowadays, they got their tablets and powders. What the fuck does that even mean?
I mean, I guess heroin makes you more violent. People just discovered cocaine in Europe. Shut up. You're an idiot.
In beer news, the cheapest countries, speaking of Europe, to buy beer are Italy, Spain, and Germany. 2 of those is pretty surprising.
Why is Germany so cheap?
I
mean, they make a lot of beer, but
There's
so
got to
do
be
we.
some subsidies. I don't know. I think a large part of it too is when you look at ownership of these breweries and you look at overhead costs. When you've been owning your own brewery since 1500 fucking AD, 500 years
Yeah,
ago,
yeah,
600 years
sure.
ago, you're not paying overhead on a goddamn loan.
You don't have a mortgage.
Yes. And I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, I assume that's true. Italy and Spain, I guess, I don't know, that's kind of surprising, except that they're also not big beer cultures. And they also, cost of living is pretty cheap in both of those countries. At least it has been. The rich have been screwing it up. But, and there's that whole thing in Spain. It's kind of weird, except not. Like, people seem to be shocked that the Spanish are rebelling against tourism. Like, because the people who live there are being priced out by Airbnb and rich bastards with rental properties. I mean, it's like every other decent place that there used to be to live cheap in paradise.
Yeah.
You know, it's all being taken over by the 1%. They're buying up everything and they're pricing everybody out of like being able to just, you know, live. You used to be able to like just live a simple life in Key West or, you know, a gazillion other places. Lots of California, you know, Big Sur, you go live there for cheap. And you can't live anywhere with a view for cheap anymore.
Yeah, and I get the frustration in Spain. It's tough too because like they are frustrated because the cost of living is high, and it's easy to point the finger at tourists coming in because they obviously have money to visit your country and buy all these things that you can't afford. But on the same hand, for a lot of these regions in Spain, most of their GDP is through tourism.
Right.
So you're biting the hand that feeds you in a way. So, but like it's not the
You're
populist's
even biting the wrong hand, I think.
Yes.
Because Spain just got rid of that. They were doing that like citizenship thing where you could become a citizen and buy property if you met some financial threshold. Like, you know, if you had $400,000 a year or something, and bam, you're a member of Spain. And I think really drove a lot of the problems with their real estate values. We're doing similar stuff all over the world.
Yeah, it is a shame.
It's time to bring back the guillotine, as we say here routinely.
Well, speaking of bringing things back, the takeout.com has put out a list of the disappearing beers in America.
Yeah.
Now, this is clearly a clickbait list, especially when you really dive into it. There's things on there like Olympia, like this old regional lager that is worth saving and lamenting. And Bud Dry is a story we're talking about. But then there's
Bud
things
Dry.
on there like Billy Beer or Red, White, and Blue Lager. Like,
Billy Beer was around for like 2 years.
yeah, and it was clearly
we got
a joke at the time.
Back here, yeah.
I mean, that's not something that we need to lament the loss of. Really, we needed to be talking about like the loss of Olympia, the loss of Schlitz, the loss of these regionals over time, which we do explore in our podcast as well. Which you can
Schlitz
find.
in particular.
Yes.
Is Schlitz on the list?
Schlitz is not on the list.
Well,
which is
because
insane.
Schlitz still exists. We haven't been able to find it, but we are told that it exists out there. You can buy it somewhere.
Well, Narragansett's another great example of a regional brand that's seeing some comeback success. So I think that is worth celebrating. It is worth lamenting the loss of these regional brands, this history, this marketing knowledge that we once had as a country, and that we're actually losing. A lot of these don't even go over the lack or the loss of craft beer that we're seeing at an exponential level right now.
Oh, these Narragansetts, by the way, I make these disappear every week.
Hey, nice.
What? Yeah, I mean, what's on the list? Is there anything on that list that I give a shit about?
Like I said, Olympia,
Bud Dry really makes me
Kruger's
sad.
Cream Ale, Henry Weinhardt's
I mean, that's
Private
old.
Reserve,
What? I've never even heard of that.
Kirkland's Signature Beer. It's a bullshit
heard of
list.
that.
Yeah, there's a lot of crap on here. Bud Dry, like I said, nothing really worth.
There's a lot of
actually
regional
getting sad
beers across the country that went away because they were all pretty much the same, but people had affinities to them, you know.
Yeah.
But all right,
Yeah, I think
we've established that we don't care.
Yeah. The bigger issue is that they really missed on the true story here of where we're seeing the loss of identity around craft beer and regional styles that did pop up at a time and are now quickly being gobbled up and turned over and chewed out and spit away and destroyed.
Yeah, a lot of the beers that we have lost are still made.
Yes.
They're just lost.
Yes, exactly.
You know, a lot of these beers were fantastic craft beers that were bought up by greedhead scum that now just aren't very good. Like Boulevard out of Kansas City is the one that we both had a real affinity for. They were making some spectacular beers.
New Belgium, the whole of New Belgium.
New Belgium used to be a spectacular brewery. It now just makes piss. 27 different
It does make me
versions of
appreciate
Blue
more
Ranger.
what something like Sierra Nevada is doing, being able to hold true to their roots while continuing to innovate without scrubbing their identity and their beer history.
Yeah. We also interviewed Ken Grossman in our podcast. Super nice guy. And that company is, I mean, is there anything else like that company? Sierra Nevada is still privately owned by that family since 1980.
Yes.
I mean, even Boston Beer, Jim Cook has some level of control, but it's a publicly traded company. You know, he doesn't get to decide. He's not the decider. But Grossman and his family, they still operating like a craft brewery on a exceptionally large billionaire scale.
It's truly impressive what they've been able to do and how they've been able to maintain that identity.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see if they can keep that going for another 30, 40, 50
And
years.
as a result, the beer is still fantastic. The beer hasn't
It truly
changed.
is. In wine news, 19 Crimes, the famous wine brand that has spokespeople such as Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg, has released...
I love how those two get along. Like it seems to be like a genuine thing. They like to do things together, and it's
Like crime?
Well, like crimes. Yeah, like crimes.
It is wholesome.
Yeah.
It's very wholesome.
Yeah.
It's an odd couple for sure. However, 19 Crimes has released a wine list, W-H-I-N-E, basically calling out wine snobs for being whiny little bitches. And this wine list is coming off the back of what the real announcement is that 19 Crimes is now in cans. So canned wine. Mike, are we at peak canned wine? Does it have a future?
I hope it just goes away.
Canned wine?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I have come to accept good beer in cans, but man, there's just something about a bottle of wine. Although I will say, one of the problems with wine, I would probably drink less wine if I didn't know that I open a bottle of wine, I'm committed to drinking a bottle of wine. That's just not always practical. You know, it's not going to be good the next day. You got to go through it.
Yeah, there's some nights I'll open a bottle of wine thinking, oh, the wife will definitely drink a glass or two. And she goes, no,
Yeah.
I'm good. And then I think, well, guess I'm getting drunk. Wasn't planning on it. Guess it's happening.
Can't let this go to waste. It's going to be vinegar tomorrow.
So according to a new study sponsored by the Napa Valley Tourist Board, Napa Valley is seeing record levels of diversity in their tourism. They have tripled the number of black Americans that have visited Napa Valley since 2018.
Which means there's like 3.2 million people a year, something like that, showing up there. And so like 12 of them are black now. It's great.
Shoot for the stars, Mike. Shoot for the stars.
It is good. It's also interesting that there's more diversity there. There's also like the average age of people going to Napa Valley has gone from 46 in 2018 to 40 now. So it's
That's pretty shocking, actually.
they are drawing in a younger and more diverse crowd, but the average consumer there is, or the average tourist, visitor, whatever, they're spending an average of $281 a day, and only 38% of them stay the night.
So they're
throughout the
basically
course of the
spending
weekend.
$281 on wine
Yes,
a day.
a day per person. So that's pretty crazy. It's not like, let's not like pat ourselves on the back of how much of the midsection of America we're reaching. It's
No, you still have to be rich to go to Napa, is what that says.
Yeah.
Despite Napa saying, hey, we're cool, we have a black friend, it's still not affordable to go to Napa.
yeah, you have a rich black friend.
Well,
Will Smith. Congrats.
Speaking of the opposite end of the spectrum, the Fifth Circuit Court has put out a ruling on tipped wages. Now, I'm not going to pretend I understand how to say any of this stuff, so Mike, I'm just going to kick it right over to you.
Here's my understanding of what's happened. This is the first major ruling after they eliminated the Chevron deference rule in that recent Supreme Court case whose name I always forget. But what that means, translated, is that there was, for a very long period of time, this understanding that we have federal agencies, executive agencies, for a reason. You know, they are full of people who are experts in their field, so we tend to defer to their interpretation of how to apply legislation. You know, Congress gives a broad order, and these agencies, whether the EPA or Department of Labor or Department of Energy or whatever.
Which makes sense. A scientist at the EPA is going to know more about how to protect the environment than some dickhead like J.D. Vance in the Senate.
Yes. I mean, do you really want Marjorie Taylor Greene interpreting your legislation, or would you prefer it to be somebody that actually knew their ass from their head? So this current corrupt Supreme Court, send your bribes to ClarenceThomas.com, they said no, every arbitrary right-wing judge in America knows more than the people that actually know things. So this is the first major ruling after that. It has to do with tipped wages. And Department of Labor had this rule where they said you can only get out of paying federal minimum wage if your employees are doing at least 80% of their work in an atmosphere where they're going to get tipped. So if like more than 20% of what you have employees do is not an opportunity for them to be tipped, then you can't pay them $2.13 an hour, which seems like a pretty damn fair thing.
That seems fair. Basically, if you're a bartender, 80% of your time needs to be serving drinks and interacting with customers, and 20% can be cleaning and stocking and other things.
Yeah,
but not more than 20%.
They can't be taking 50% of your time stocking stuff and moving things from a warehouse and
without paying you a fair wage.
$2.13 an hour. But Fifth Circuit, which is notoriously right-wing as hell, said no. You know, that exceeds the authority of that federal agency. If you want to rule like that, then Congress needs to pass legislation, which is problematic because they're not going to. And not only that, we did this whole tirade, which I don't take a second of back, about Trump and his stupid idea of let's not tax tips.
Which is actually really disappointing that Harris
Kamala Harris doubled down on it. And politically, I understand it. From a policy standpoint, it's no less stupid when she says it than when he says it. You know, it's not good to encourage employers to be able to shift more of their burden onto, our employees are tipped.
Yes, which now these two things coupled together basically means you could be a tipped employee like a bartender. However, only 10% of your time is actually bartending. 90% of the time is doing grunt work, but you're making just enough money in tips to get the federal minimum wage, which is like $7 an hour.
Yeah.
And boom, now you don't qualify for any additional money. When as a bartender, if you were doing 80% of your time at bartending, you'd be making closer to $20, $25, $30 to $50 an hour, depending on how busy your bar was. Right. So
there's a market limit to that, obviously. I mean, are you going to be able to maintain employees where you're paying them $2.13 an hour? No, and states can have minimum wages, but yeah, it's just not good policy.
You're creating a culture that allows abuse to happen, even if it's not widespread. There will be bars in every city and town that take advantage of that, whether they mean to or not, and whether they're doing it on purpose or not.
Yeah, it's a spiraling back down of labor protections.
Yes. In other disappointing and depressing news, in Ireland, 2,000 pubs have closed since 2005. What is that? Numbers, I don't know. I don't know,
but it's not a country with a huge population. It's a tiny little country.
6 million people, I think, live in Ireland.
Yeah.
And 2,000 pubs have closed. There has also been a decrease in drinking over that same time period of about a third.
Yeah, 20 years, a third decrease. So it's been, but yes, they're drinking a lot less. And if I can't blame my Irishness on my overconsumption of alcohol, then what good are the Irish to me?
Yeah, I don't know what it says about, is this Gen Z thing broader than just the America viewpoint that we like to look at it? Is it really this whole generation of the Western world, or any second, third world, any country really, that has access to the internet and being restricted through COVID? Have we just eliminated socialization on a massive scale? Is there other changes happening here?
Yeah,
is it actually a good thing?
Technology, and yes, I don't. We've been going through this extended life is less fun phase, and it is broader than the United States. It's broader than us. It's a bigger cultural thing, and I hope we get out of it because, shit. I'm tired of everybody being a dick.
Yeah, me too, Mike. I think it says something too about a lot of these closings are rural. And I think that is also an American thing where just rural in general is kind of on the downturn.
Right.
And I don't know how
I don't know anything about Europe, but it seems to be a European problem. Like they're giving away real estate in Italy and Spain because it's rural areas, and you can like pick up a 1500s farmhouse for $5, and it's not Europe, I'm told on a map, but Japan also has a similar thing with like not being able to maintain population in rural areas.
Yeah,
it's where you're again. It's almost a 19th century Gilded Age pattern of behavior where you need to go to cities to be able to earn a living.
Yes. It does.
And also perhaps to get laid.
Well, I mean, that definitely helps. You can only fuck so many sheep before you get tired of it.
I mean, so I've been told. But I'm not tired of it yet.
Well, speaking of goat fuckers, the CEO at
Sheep
Kroger's...
and goat are different species, you racist bastard.
The CEO at Kroger has come out in an antitrust lawsuit.
It's about time he came out.
And he has said that the raising of prices that they have done through COVID was more than needed via inflationary pressures.
Shocking! Shocking!
You're surprised, Mike.
Shocking! Out of the other side of his mouth, he said, Kamala Harris saying the word price gouging is an absolute lie.
Yeah, so they have basically admitted to price gouging.
Yes, because they've been price gouging.
Yep.
You know what we should let them do? Become a bigger corporation. We should let them become a monopoly for a huge section of America because we can definitely trust them. I think that they're good people and they have our best interest at heart.
Oh, that's really funny because some text messages between C-suite level executives at Kroger have also just been released this week of them texting around and basically being flippant about the whole market and how they can run it, and no one else is even big enough to compete with them, and they should just buy up businesses and other grocery stores and sell off other portions to others to let them fail and then scoop them up after they fail in order to get around antitrust laws.
Yeah, sounds
Basically,
fantastic.
Quote, all of their competitors are, quote, dogs. So they are all dogs. So, I don't think that they're doing anything that's in any good interest of anyone that buys groceries.
They are absolutely not. And there is this philosophy with this present CEO who really is scum of the earth. And, they used to have the Kroger closest to me, and I live between two of them, and they're my primary shopping options. One of them was managed for a while by this guy that was like one alternative future of Kroger. And this manager of this particular store, I don't know who the guy is, but I love him. For this brief period of time, Kroger was run like a small town grocery store. It was run like a place run by human beings, and there was never a line, and the cashiers were friendly, and people were helpful, and it just felt good. Like I enjoyed going to buy groceries. It was part of like a
nice
neighborhood experience. And then they got rid of that guy, of course, and got rid of the cashiers and went to like these conveyor belt self-checkouts so that if you have a full grocery cart full of stuff, you get to check it out all by yourself. It takes at least 2 people to buy groceries. It takes you 40% more time just to buy stuff. Like every ounce of what they're doing is greed, greed, greed. It's disgusting. I don't go to that store anymore. I haven't been to Kroger in a month and a half, and I'm sure at some point I'll break down. I'll have to get something there. But man, if you can get it at Aldi, I get it there. And beyond that, Kroger can just fuck off.
And what's terrible too is if you look at like the state of the industry, is the story on Albertson's side is so telling of how fucked this whole situation is. Albertsons basically said to a federal or a state circuit court in Oregon that you need to let this go through, because if you don't, we're gonna fail. And the only way we can compete against the Goliaths like Walmart and Costco is if we become a Goliath ourselves.
Yeah.
Which is the complete wrong way to look at it.
That is a fantastic argument for why you need to break up Walmart and Costco and Amazon.
Yes.
It's why we need a trust buster. It's why we need Teddy Roosevelt resurrected.
Yes.
And maybe Teddy Roosevelt is a chick named Kamala Harris.
We can only hope. Yeah, the answer is not more companies that are too big. The answer is more companies that are small and local and community oriented.
Yeah.
And by consolidating, we're not going to get there. So,
no.
I mean,
that's just a race to the bottom of treating people worse, treating both your employees worse and your consumers worse. Those guys, they made all kinds of news lately. They also tried to pull some nonsense of some backward logic, like there were these attorney generals from 4 shithole states, Ohio and some southern ones, that said you should drop this suit, FTC, because somehow magically less competition is going to be more competition, and less options for the consumer is somehow going to benefit them. The same logic they actually used in legal briefs with like the labor movement, that you should drop this objection to our antitrust suit, or you should drop this antitrust suit against us because somehow by us having more power to screw over our employees is not in the interest of our employees. Like us screwing them over is good for them somehow. There's just so much backward logic nonsense. I know it's completely inarticulate there, but
no, I think that sums up the situation at hand. You say things that with a positive tone that's strong and demanding, even though the words don't make sense. People are like, yeah, I think he's onto something there. Mm-hmm. No, I get why Albertsons is saying that, because logically it makes sense to make that argument to get what you want, which is a buyout.
Yeah.
But it is a horrible argument, and the logic is terrible.
Well, yeah, and I mean, what's worse there is that they may be right. They may be right.
They are right.
They're at a point where Walmart has so much buying power that it's difficult for them to compete. Although at the same time, that only means competing if you're trying to out Walmart.
Yes.
If what you're doing is making me enjoy shopping at your store, like I did for that period of time at the Kroger by me, well, I didn't check the prices. I wasn't like, oh, can I get this cheaper driving out to Walmart and, going through that horse shit that is Walmart. I didn't think of that. I enjoyed shopping there. So actually, you can compete by treating people decent. It's a thing. It used to be a thing all the time. Customer service was a thing. Making people want to shop in your store used to make you money. And it still could. It still would.
If we
They
didn't
just
have
don't see
monopolies.
it. Yeah. If we didn't have monopolies.
Well, Speaking of depressing news, and let's just keep this sad gravy
Depression
train
is
rolling.
going on, sure. Sure.
Dollar General had a horrible quarter, one of their worst. And they have said that their customer base, which is roughly 40 to 60% of all Americans, are running out of money at the end of the month and can't even afford to shop at Dollar General.
Wow.
Right?
Dollar General also, there's a lot of places where Dollar General has a monopoly.
This is
but Dollar General, I'm not going to call them a good company, but they didn't get those monopolies where they have them by running other places out of business for the most part. I'm sure that that's happened in places. But for the most part, they moved in to areas that had lost all of their viable businesses. You know, everything else was gone just through the market because those areas were so economically depressed. So if you cannot make money at a Dollar General as truly the only option in an area and a dirt cheap option, then that's telling you something very significant about where we're at with how the American economy is operating.
Yeah, and let's not get twisted. Dollar General is not a good company.
No,
they are
they're
chronically
pretty-
understaffed.
Yes.
They are underpaid. They generally
They
only
do
have
really
one
greasy
employee in
bad
the
stuff.
whole store at any given time. It's never stocked well because they only have one person there.
Right.
It's a whole goddamn wreck. It's a terrible experience.
Yeah.
It did provide a service that wasn't in a lot of neighborhoods to these neighborhoods. So, but the fact that you're right that the bottom of the economic ladder can't even afford to go to the bottom of the economic ladder store, there is a big problem.
There's
brewing, a big problem.
There's a big problem.
So I don't know what that means. Dollar General sells alcohol, so I guess that's how it ties into our news. I don't know what that means for any of us. I don't know what that means for this show, but I do know that I am a little bit more sad than I was when we started this episode. But
Thanks, Brett.
I guess I'm just going to go have a couple more beers and hang out with my newborn.
Yeah, I'm not going to hang out with your kid.